Hello and welcome back. We are here joined by ENOTA, architecture office from Ljubljana, Slovenia, and they will present Koper Central Park, which is in a coastal city in Slovenia. Please begin your presentation.
Hello, everybody. As I mentioned, we're from the office ENOTA, and we'll be presenting a project called Koper Central Park, which is actually located on the coast of Slovenia in the port town of Koper. And some of you may know, Slovenia has a very short coastline that connects her to the Mediterranean Sea. We have approximately 42 kilometers of coast, which roughly translates into about 20 centimeters of coastline per person. So you can kind of imagine it's really important to us that we are careful in how we are developing it. The red line you see here is the coastal road that was just recently closed for traffic. And the small red square is our project. So the location kind of represents a starting point for a new development of a beach between the towns of Isola and Koper. If we zoom in a little bit, the park is part of a development of a currently degraded area between old and new part of town, alongside the old axis connecting them. It is placed right next to the promenade, the red line you can see there, and the former dike that once acted as a link between the city and the mainland. The city of Koper actually used to be an island in the past. It was only connected to the coast with a single bridge. This bridge existed well into the 20th century, to be exact. And then was gradually, with time, new connections were established, like our promenade that you can see here on the picture. And then the land in between the city and the mainland was first transformed into salt fields, but then gradually filled in with soil to gain more space for the expansion of the city. Here you can find, in this filled in area, you can find shopping malls, offices, sports hall, and even a prison. The land next to this axis, which is our site, you can see here on the bottom right, was more or less degraded, used for parking or nothing at all. So the idea was to gradually transform this whole location next to the sea into a park and a recreational area. You can already see our intervention here on the lower right, and it is one of the steps towards reclaiming the land and converting it into a recreational park that the city lacks. At the same time, the densely developed Old Town does not really include any large spaces for concerts, open-air theaters, and so on. Furthermore, the noise from such events is usually disturbing to residents. So this location really offers a great opportunity to host such a program as well. In essence, this is what we started the project with, and we showed these two pictures to the client. So we showed them the best-known city park in the world and the best-known city beach in the world. And we kind of told them that this is what we really want to do here. We were quite ambitious. So because actually the park they've asked for should perform two functions. It is a green area for the city, as well as the beginning of a new city beach. This is an image of the park as it exists. So the basic building blocks of the park are these monolithic undulating concrete elements. And their controlled placement in space, in combination with pronounced topography of a series of green patches, kind of softly divides the whole park into smaller programmatic areas. They create different ambience and multifunctional spaces. The design of the individual elements then corresponds to different demands of different programs. Creating this kind of attractive topography of organic concrete dunes, giving function and character to separate program sites, that are then connected with a series of blurred paved areas. This is a plan of the entire area of the new city park with all the different shapes and curves. The organization of space might look quite complicated at first, but in essence, it is really connected with a singular weaving curve that defines and separates different spatial zones. Simple enough. But since this was not a high budget project, we also had to find a simple way to fabricate these geometries. So we have partitioned the different elements into different sections, converted all of them into 3D coordinates that are then mapped onto the terrain, which you could probably see in this yellow area in the middle, and exported them out as flat sheets for workers on site. There were more than 3,000 different sections that were used in the project. And these sections are then defining the final shape of various concrete dunes. The photos you can see here were taken right after the opening, which happened sometime in late autumn. We have different heights of different spatial elements, where sometimes they simply serve as partitioners of space, while in other spots they create stands for smaller events. We also included a larger theater area with high stands that shelter people from the nearby traffic, while opening at some points to still let people from the outside see what's happening inside the park. We didn't really predict the use for all of the spaces. We left some for people to kind of appropriate by themselves. The park also includes a series of different water features that enable a sort of playful environment that serve as off-road running tracks for the youngest and the kids. There's a small lake here, a kid's playground, a library under the trees, a small climbing wall, and even a dog's playground. Because if you remember this picture from the beginning, it is not only a park, but it also functions as an extension of the beach. Some of these photos that were taken the following spring, and as you can see, there's already some more greenery in some of these pictures. It is all local, indigenous Mediterranean vegetation that is typical for the region. And as mentioned before, there's a number of different water elements. Namely, there's a small lake that you can kind of walk over using a series of stones, or run through if you really feel like it. There are also summer cooling pipes that bring down the temperature during hot days, which are at the moment very useful until the trees end up growing a little bit more. And as mentioned before, part of the dunes serve to create smaller, kind of more intimate streams of water that kids really love to play and explore. There's also larger bodies of water in terms such as fountains that are placed towards the middle of the park. And I think there's really no words that are needed here. You can probably really feel the character of the space in this picture. It is also a picture I'd like to leave everybody with. We believe that the innovative layout of the city park is a great asset for the citizens of Koper. It enables the development of programs which the city couldn't offer so far. The new park is an attraction, and with its unique form and spatial organization, it transcends a merely functional park layout. It could represent, actually, a prototype for further design of the wider nearby area, as well as a motivation for faster development of this new future beach between the towns of Koper and Isola. At the end, I'd like to say that we're also really, really happy to see that the people of Koper embraced our thoughts and have accepted the park really well. Thank you all very much for your attention.
Thank you for the presentation. I must say I've been to the park 2 times with my son, and he absolutely loved it. And I also thought at the time that it really corresponds well to the children imagination. They start at the one end, and they are on the other end, but they don't realize exactly going there. So it's a bit disorienting, but in a very positive way for a playground, or let's say. But
Thanks.
one thing I would ask is if we can just see the site plan again, please, because
you want me to roll back the slides?
The site plan, yes.
Yeah, okay.
Because
so
considering the proximity of the sea, I can kind of saw now the
so you mean even this one, for example?
Oh no, the site plan was okay. Or this one. Okay, this one is also the air photo. Yeah, okay. I'm interested, for example, more in this stitch between the promenade and the park, because now, as I can see it, there you have the car park, and then there's a promenade, which is kind of proximity of the sea, but both sides seem kind of equally, let's say, there was equal attention to both of them. So how will this place develop in future, do you think? But because the water is getting cleaned, now in past couple of years, and someday probably this will be beach. So if you can expand on this, how the park connects to that promenade in a way that can be used both as a because you have sunset there, for example, and I don't see any, for example, benches that you can from the park watch the sunset, for example, or just somehow relate to the sea more closely.
Actually, the idea is for the car park is part of a future development, which was originally also included in the plan for the park, but then the client kind of didn't have enough funding to develop that. So that is going to be renovated. But the park itself kind of has this double kind of character. So it's essentially a city park, but it doubles as a bit of a kind of a background for this promenade that is serves as a beach. But the real actual, this is like a city beach, and it's not going to really change that much in those terms. The real actual kind of more natural beach is the development that comes afterwards, which is all this road that I mentioned, I think in the beginning, that is now closed for traffic. So the park is not exactly your typical beach like you would see in Copacabana with like sand and all that. That's not really in the plans. So the promenade stays as kind of this city boulevard next to the water, and the park serves to kind of be the backbone of this. So it's never going to be.
Sure,
Yeah.
I understood that the promenade is fantastic as well, but I just thought that the promenade would be taken into the park, that there would be some kind of difference in the site plan where because you have you can watch the sea there. So I just thought there's just one path I see, the connecting park and the promenade. But okay, so Lily and Todd, do you have any questions, please?
Yes, thank you so much for the presentation. I was pleased to see you told us a bit about the history of the site, that it was a car park, and I wonder if you could touch on any soil remediation that you need to do, and also any ecological aspects that you took into account, maybe with the planting or with the irrigation. Thank you.
Maybe Milan wants to answer that one.
So the soil was like a degraded soil that was left over for construction yards, and it was just not a quality one. So we have to replace almost completely the upper part of the soil, and irrigation was done as well, of course, because there is no condition that we can maintain this greenery during the summer. And so it was we worked with some ecological aspects in terms that this soil was kind of left over from the previous constructions, and it was really truly degraded area.
Thank you. Could you talk about the plant choice, maybe the tree choice?
The choice for what? I'm sorry?
The planting, the tree types.
Oh, I mean, planting, yeah, the different types. Basically, we worked with a landscape architect on that, who provided basically purely indigenous planting for the area. So all of it is Mediterranean plants and trees. Pine trees, you have lavender, and I think some other kind of indigenous trees.
We don't know exactly the names.
but basically, yeah, it is all meant to kind of grow on its own without the use of too much water or irrigation, because it's meant to kind of thrive in these kind of conditions.
Yeah, can you sort of point out exactly where your park is on this one, please, again? Is it that square?
Oh yeah, so it's basically this red square. Can you see my mouse?
That's that bridge, okay. So it acts like a bridge, and you're saying, okay, and Koper before was an island, and it was connected by a causeway, is that right?
Exactly.
And it's silted up, or was it all built up?
Spot.
Yeah, and all the developments taken around there, is that all reclaimed land then, or how does that work?
Yeah, basically all of this area. Well, this is still a leftover of what the sea used to be back here, and all of this is the reclaimed land. All of this around, basically. Yeah.
That's the port.
Right. Okay. I see. Okay. Interesting. Okay. And are there
So
other
all of this was basically filled in.
Yeah. Yeah. I see. Okay. And I'm never having been there, just uncertain how that works.
It was a very shallow sea, so it was kind of full of mud. It was not like a beautiful beaches. It's just like a muddy, shallow sea around the island.
So the shapes that you used, I mean, that were, well, the landscape architect was employing in there, the sort of natural wave-like patterns and things. Is that supposed to emulate the those little sandbars and mud flats and things like that, or what was this? What was a specific?
Yeah, to an extent, they kind of link to this semantic of a beach with sand dunes, because this is kind of, that's what we kind of the area we exist in. But also at the same time, we wanted to do something that is a bit ambiguous, as somebody before mentioned, that you can kind of appropriate and reappropriate over time, so people can kind of figure out a little bit on their own how to use some of these kind of different geometries, different creations, different volumes, so to say. So there wasn't, let's say, a very particular, for some of them, there's very particular use, such as we knew we needed like steps for the theater area. We knew we needed stuff like to happen and to transform into benches and sitting areas. But some of it was just left for people to kind of use and figure out.
Yeah, and the name for the Central Park is that location, but also it has a kind of does have that sort of feel of a long, narrow, sort of Central Park-like presence in the town. Yeah. Okay.
I mean, the name essentially comes from the fact that it's basically a central between the two, so the old town and the new development, right?
Yeah. Brilliant.
I'm interested, with this urban park that has a lot of different pressures of use for, these dense urban areas. Did you find in the design some tension between different needs and requirements for the park during the process?
So wait, maybe if we go to something like this, no? If you said you wanted to learn a little bit more about the different programmatic areas that exist in the park.
Yeah, and maybe the tensions in the design, it's often in these kind of parks, there's a balance between these different competing needs.
Well, I see. Well, basically, we've got two larger areas, right? So two bigger openings, which are more like an event. This is the bigger event space. Then you've got this other slightly bigger area, which is a bit more undefined, and it's used a lot like kind of like a tiny soccer field for kids to play with, like ball games and so on. Then the water features are kind of distributed through the park. These are the bigger kind of the streams that come down. Well, 3 or 4 of these dunes. The bigger lake is here on the right, and then you have essentially this. What you see, maybe it's a bit hard to see in this graphic. On the right, you have the parking, which we kind of isolate ourselves from because we don't know what's happening there in the future. On the top, we've got the promenade and the sea. And from there in, we kind of bring in this biggest water feature, which is the fountain. So that's this circle over there. And from the opposite side of the road.
I'm really sorry, but we need to wrap it up. So sorry, we ran out of time, and I have the organizer
okay.
to close it out. Sorry.
It's a good explanation, though. It's a good explanation. Thank you.
Okay. So thank you for the presentation.
Yeah.
Bye.
You're welcome, guys.
Bye-bye.